7:30 in 2 months, I think.
I have 6
Are we on video?
I told them 6, so they were setting up earlier.
Well, I don't know.
All right.
We walked in,
Is that fun?
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. This is a public hearing for the school budget. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, at this point, I will turn the meeting over to Mr. McCormick to give his presentation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Canada, and welcome to everybody who came out on a Thursday. We have some repeating endeavors tonight. The new restaurant in town opened up, so
I saw that.
when you finish here, you can go to the restaurant. So I wanted to give everybody in the community who's watching kind of an update where we're at with the budget process for FY25. As you know, we started this budget process in November. Before I begin, I just want to thank our leadership team who's here tonight. In front of me, Ms. Sarah Priestley, elementary school principal, junior senior high school principal, Mr. John DiOrio, special ed director, Ms. Ann Knapp, and our business manager, Ms. Cindy Schofield. And those 4 individuals have been a big part of this process as we talk to our leadership team, our teachers, our support staff for their valuable input on this budget. A couple of goals for tonight, and some of these slides will be familiar to those who saw the presentation back in January. But the goals haven't really changed. But I just want to talk about how this is going to be framed for all of you this evening. But tonight we're going to present an updated FY25 North Brookfield Public School budget, which will include additional increased offsets and proposed cuts for next school year. At the end of this presentation, I'd be happy to entertain any questions and receive any feedback from the people who are here and those who are viewing. Some of the guiding principles that we use to develop a budget, and I think I just mentioned a few of them, but we want to make sure that this budget is accurate, is transparent, easy to understand, digest for anybody who's reading it, and based on the needs of our students. Right? We're in this business for our students, so our budget needs to reflect our priorities and our plan for achievement for all of our students. As I mentioned, we involve the entire admin team in this process, and our admin team, in turn, involved teachers, support staff, and even students. We're talking about what's good for our school district for FY25. And last, but certainly not least, the preservation of resources is the top priority, but always looking for continuous growth and improvement as a school district and our 2 schools that make up this district. So back earlier this fall, and you may have seen some of my emails about this, you may have seen meetings about this, we participated in a strategic planning exercise. Members of this room right now were part of this process, Mrs. Hanson, Mr. Canada. And what we did was we spent about a month and a half as a group of about 20 people looking at what are the priorities of North Brookfield Public Schools. And throughout this process, a part of this process, we conducted surveys, we looked at data from students and families. We talked about what are those big picture overarching goals for the next 3 years. And in this process, we developed a new mission statement. I'd like to read that for everybody here tonight, and you can read along as well. Our mission is to empower every student to reach their full potential by providing a dynamic and inclusive learning environment that fosters creativity, critical thinking, and a sense of belonging. We are committed to continuous improvement, innovation, and the celebration of diversity, ensuring the delivery of high-quality education to all. We prepare our students for success in a global society by instilling qualities and skills to be contributing and effective citizens. So you've probably seen similar statements like this in other districts, and I'm very proud of the work that we did. But statements are simply words unless they're backed up by action. And I think that over the last 2 years, we've backed up these words with a lot of action and results. And not to get into the weeds too much, but I wanted to share a couple of things that we've done over the last couple of years to really support this mission and support some of our strategic initiatives. Starting with curriculum. We have spent a lot of time with our staff, with our admin team, our leadership team, talking about and looking at what we do for our students, how we're teaching our students and what we're teaching our students. Is what we're teaching aligned to the state frameworks? Are we using the most relevant and current curriculum that we can offer our students? And over the last 2 years, we have phased in, or will be phasing in, multiple curriculums, including Bridges and Illustrative Math, Open Sci-Ed for our middle school students next year, Project Lead the Way, which is a STEM science curriculum, and then also Into Reading, which is a K-5 reading curriculum. We're proud of that work, and a lot of teachers work very hard in looking at these curriculums and make sure that they work good for our students. Partnerships, and partnerships that help foster a sense of belonging for all students and staff. This year, some of our junior, senior high school students worked with the Boston Celtics and what's called their Playbook Initiative. We've also teamed up for the last 2 years with Mass Ideas. Mass Ideas is a group that comes in, works with teachers and with students, and we've done both, to again talk about how we make a more inclusive learning environment for all of our students and our families. And that work has really kind of led the way for some really rich conversations with our kids. And our kids have taken this work and really are excited about having more conversations with all of our students. As I mentioned, we developed a strategic plan back in October, and this plan will help guide us for the next 3 years. The high school also completed their vision of the graduate, which kind of goes hand in hand with that plan, and you may have seen it on the website. I emailed out to families. It's the core values and the major items that we want all of our graduating seniors to walk away with outside of the content knowledge that they gain as a student in North Brookfield Public Schools. This year, we also added a new work-based learning program. We partnered with FlexCon, and we sent 4 students to work at different areas of FlexCon. This is in addition to our internship program that we have for our seniors. And this is all to lay the foundation of an innovative pathway designation by the state in advanced manufacturing. We're in the process of working on that grant now, that we hope to roll that out in the next school year. And last but not least, and there are more things I could talk about, but I know we have a lot to discuss tonight, enhanced student support. We know coming out of COVID that a lot of students and families and teachers have been struggling with mental health, anxiety, and we see more and more students coming to school with trauma. We had a fantastic presentation last night. John Morello, who came and spoke to our our middle school, our high school students, and our families last evening, and really talked about how trauma is affecting our kids, how addiction is affecting our kids, how mental health is affecting our kids, and what we can do as educators, as families, to support these students. So this year we wrote and were awarded a Safe and Supportive Schools grant by the state to the tune of about $100,000, which we've used to increase our in-school counseling for our students, both individually and in small groups. We have access now to a therapy dog, which will roll into next year as well. And every classroom will have what is called a calming corner, where will be items that students can use to process anxiety while remaining in class. This will also include some PD for our staff on how to support those students at those first and second level kind of tiered supports for kids. So a lot of great things. Again, I just wanted to make sure that people are aware that mission statements are great, but if we don't follow up with actions, which I think we are, I know we are, they're only words. So I'm really proud of the work that we're doing as a leadership team. I'm really proud of the work that our teachers are doing, our support staff, and our kids. Our kids are embracing these positive changes. So I just wanted to share that with all of you tonight. So let's talk about the financial picture. So this slide is similar to the one that I showed in January, but we have obviously some changes. I'm going to get to these changes now and also throughout the presentation. But that first column or row is the final approved FY24 budget, which came in just under $7.1 million. Back in January, when we initially presented, the recommended budget at that time was $7.828 million. And that was just under an 11% increase from FY24 to FY25. And that was without adding any new positions. That was just based on the cost of services that we already provide for our students, but with inflation, with increased transportation costs, with increased costs through special ed district placements, that number came in just under 11% increase. So looking at the FY25 budget initially, with our initial offsets back in January, we're looking at $9.8 million. So that was that 7.8 number plus just over $2 million in offsets, which I'll discuss a little bit further in detail in a few minutes. Increased approved to recommended. So as we're going to talk about tonight, based on recommendations from the Finance Committee to the Select Board, and the Select Board then in turn voted and approved the recommendations from the Finance Committee, the school district was tasked to cut $800,000. So these new numbers, which you see in green, are the newest numbers that we have to work with. And I'm going to explain these more in detail as we go through the presentation. But if you look at that third row down, FY25 budget with offsets, that green number, 9.42 million, that is the new projected budget, which includes 2.398 in offsets. There was an increase in offsets, but the overall budget has gone down. It's actually $69,000 less with those $800,000 in cuts and offsets than it was for FY24. So what we were originally looking at is almost an 11% increase for FY24 to FY25. We're looking at almost a 1% decrease for FY25. Again, I'm going to explain this more as we go through the presentation. So the major budget drivers, and these numbers haven't really changed as far as the totals as this process has gone on. The percentage increase or difference has changed. In some cases, it's gone down. But salaries is still around 67, 68% of our total budget. And we're looking at right around $4.75 million for salaries alone. And we just are in the process of successfully negotiating our support staff contract. So that number includes those increases to a new contract for those members. We also have sped tuition, which we saw a slight increase from FY24 to FY25, about a 7.3% increase, $93,000. We're looking at, and on the next slide we'll go into more detail about the sped placements, but this number hasn't gone up as much for a couple different reasons. If you may recall, last year during FY24, OSD increased the rates for special ed district placements by 14%, when it's typically 2 to 3%. For FY25, it went up 6%. So still high, but not nearly as high as FY24. And then last but not least, as far as your major budget drivers, is transportation. And we're seeing an increase from 980, so just under $1 million essentially, to 1.125 million for transportation. Now this includes our day-to-day regular ed transportation. This includes transportation for our special ed students. This also includes transportation for our athletic teams. So that's all transportation. And if you may recall, 2 years ago, we eliminated one bus route from our day-to-day morning and afternoon drop-off to help with the budget process at that time. So we went from 4 to 3 buses. We can't continue to do that. So this increase is based on the new AA contract that we signed last year for the next 5 years, which if you extrapolate that out, that was 30% over the 5 years, so 6% per year, plus the increased cost for the out-of-district transportation. So this is a breakdown of our special ed out-of-district placements. And it's broken into 3 categories: collaborative, private day, and residential. And we have projected right now 12 students who would fall into one of these categories for next school year. We're seeing an increase of just shy of $100,000. So going from 1.629 in FY24, which is our actual budget for out-of-district placements, to 1.749. And that's an increase of 1 student, and retaining those one-to-one paraprofessionals for some of those students who are outplaced. And again, this is a number that is based on what we know and what we have. There's no fluff to this part of the budget whatsoever. There can't be. You know, we have to operate on as close to exact numbers as we can. So what's tricky about this is if we have a student or family that moves into the district and needs to have their child outplaced, we'll have to look at this budget again, and we'll have to look at how we can support that student. But This is something that's very volatile, if you will, as far as our budget's concerned, that, again, we don't know from any given year how many students we'll have that will fit into this category. But it is our moral obligation to always provide the best services for all of our students. And I just want to be very clear that these placements are made in the best interest of these students. So I mentioned this already, but this slide kind of just puts it into words. But we saw a 6% increase in our out-of-district placements for FY25, which is a much better scenario than FY24, which was 14%. We saw a bigger spike from 23 to 24. But we're still seeing these bigger increases than we've expected or we've had over the last 4 or 5 years. These next 2 slides, I've shown these slides before. This is just a list of all of our offsets that we use. And as I mentioned, we have about $2.3 million in offsets for FY25. This is everything from circuit breaker reimbursement, which circuit breaker, for those who do not know, is the special ed reimbursement that the state offers. And that's to offset some of the costs of our out-of-district placements. We have our IDA grants, we have school choice, we have our Title I grants, we have our small rural and our rural school aid grants, which we'll discuss a little more in detail later. But all of these offsets, without these offsets, we could not do what we do. And we've had to be creative over the last couple of years to make these offsets work in the best way for our students, to be the most impactful, and to sometimes try to carry over those offsets from fiscal year to fiscal year to make sure that we have some money in reserve as much as we can. And that's been challenging, given the financial climate and also how we are running out of ESSER funds as of September 2024. So again, looking at the FY25 offset, we're looking at just shy of $2.4 million. So ESSER, I'm assuming that most of you in this room are familiar with what ESSER funds are. If you do not know, ESSER funds were started during COVID. There was 3 rounds of funding: ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3. ESSER 1 was primarily used for PPE and some technology. ESSER 2 was technology and supports. And ESSER 3 was kind of used for whatever, and a lot of districts, including North Brookfield, used that to offset salaries. Because of budgetary constraints, most districts in the Commonwealth had to use some or a lot of their ESSER funds to support salaries. So what we're seeing and what's happening now as these ESSER funds dry up, if you will, come September 24, is that term fiscal cliff. And I'm very tired of that term, but that's a real thing, is that all this money that we were receiving from the state is gone. This is the last year that we'll have that money to spend. So districts are looking at those gaps and have to be even more creative with how they're filling those gaps. These are the numbers, these are the 3 rounds of funding that we received. So year 1 was $65,000, year 2 was $265,000, and ESSER 3, which we're just completing now, was roughly $575,000. Again, kind of redundant what I just said, but we are done with ESSER funding. So, like every district in the Commonwealth, we are looking at how do we save money, how do we roll money over from fiscal year to fiscal year, and how do we use what we have and make it work for us the best we can. Circuit breaker. This is a big change from when we presented back in January. As I said, circuit breaker is used to offset our special ed out-of-district placements. We received when we initially did our figuring for our FY25 budget, we were looking at right around 56% reimbursement. Now that's a lowball number, but we want it to be on the lower side in case it's stuck there. And we have some assurances now that that number will be at 75% reimbursement, pending the governor's signature. But that number greatly, in a positive way, affects our overall budget. So our new number, which is a $570,000 increase roughly, is projected at $1.18 million for FY25 to offset the cost of our special ed district placements. Now, I'm hearing as of yesterday, so this is regarding tuition. As of yesterday, the House Ways and Means is looking at funding transportation at 75% as well. So we have not changed that number as of yet. That number may also go up for us, which will be a good thing for the district, good thing for a lot of districts. So if that number changes, it will be more support, financial support for our district as well. I just want to kind of give you the timeline. This is an email that was sent from the Finance Committee. Many of the members are here this evening, to members of the Select Board regarding where we fall, the process, or what departments will need to cut what in order to fill that nearly almost $1.6 million budget deficit that the town has. As you can see, I highlighted in yellow, this was on April 11th. The school district reduction was $800,000. The Select Board then went on to vote this, or adopt this plan, make it official on April 16th. So where does that leave our district? And this is where we have to start to think about what we're going to do, next steps, and make those decisions. As I've already kind of alluded to, we've had some really good information come our way in the last month or so, some positive information around circuit breaker funding and how that's going to change in a positive way for us. But that increase, the percentage increase for circuit breaker from 56 to 75, that equates to $300,000 increase for North Brookfield. That's a huge chunk of money for our district to offset that cost. And that can't be understated. Rural school aid. We found out roughly about a month and a half ago that we're going to be receiving $94,000 that we did not plan on. And you may be wondering, why is that? Well, a lot of these funding mechanisms are very fluid. Circuit breaker changes based on the overall budget, and that's why it's slightly different from year to year. And rural school aid, you don't typically find out until the school year has started. But we were awarded more funds than we initially anticipated. We also are saving some money by having one less student. One less student is going to an under placement to the tune of $148,000. And then we also have a student who is will be stepping down in placement, which will be a cost savings to the district as well. We know of a teacher resignation that will be a savings in both salary and insurance costs to the tune of almost $40,000. And then just last night, and this was the newest addition to this presentation, the ARPA committee awarded the school district another $15,000 to offset some technology costs. And I just want to thank ARPA for their continued support. We have received now just under $60,000 from the ARPA committee for technology support and some other initiatives over this past year. So I appreciate their support, and there may be more coming. So all this in total is just over $606,000. So we're getting there, right? So that's the first part of this. We were able to increase our offsets or receive some more grant funding that we weren't anticipating to kind of close that gap, a big chunk of that gap. Second part, and this is a part that we have to, that nobody wants to talk about or look at, because this is talking about people and positions, is where do we look at reductions in personnel and programs? And I commend the leadership team because we had multiple conversations for many months about this. And the one thing that we always went back to is we need to make sure that we keep as many opportunities as possible for our students. We don't want to just get uncreative and lazy and eliminate positions that are not necessarily core subjects for students, but are could be looked at as being something that could be taken off the table. We want as many opportunities as possible for our kids. Our kids deserve that. And so we looked at our current staffing pattern, we looked at our numbers, we looked at a lot of different things we have going on in the district. And this is what we landed on. This is my proposed reductions in personnel and programs for FY25. The first one is eliminating 2 sixth grade teaching positions at the elementary school. And what would happen if we did that is those 6th grade students would then move up to the junior senior high. The junior high would become a true middle school model, okay, educating grades 6, 7, and 8 in the middle school wing. We've done a lot of research. I've done a lot of research looking at NELMS, for example, and that is the model that most districts are adopting. That middle school model is the most impactful for student education at that age group, and it keeps those kids together for that 3-year time period. And for those of you who've been in the junior senior high school, you know that the school is spread out in 2 different separate wings. There's the middle school circle and there's the high school circle. Our students have separate lunches, our students have separate social activities, and our students have separate groups of teachers. Our middle school teachers teach just middle school students. They may have a one-off elective, but they teach those middle school students. So those 2 groups of kids pretty much don't see much of each other outside of the bus and dismissal time during the day. They're housed in those 2 ends of the school. So that combined is a savings of $103,000. Number 2 is eliminate 1 FTE special education teacher. And this is something that, again, we wrestled with quite a bit, because we know that we have students that need those supports. We want inclusion. We want our special ed students to be in classrooms, and we want to adopt a co-teaching model in the very near future, and we want those highly qualified special ed teachers. But this year, we had a real struggle finding qualified special ed teachers. We had 2 positions that were open for most of the year. So we're going to retain one of those positions and eliminate 1 position for FY25. So that the salary plus insurance is right around $64,000. And the last reduction in a program would be our inter-reading curriculum. Now, I mentioned this earlier in the presentation. We will still be purchasing this curriculum through some savings that we had this year on unspent salaries. That will be a savings of $30,000 from our curriculum line item. So those 3 things together are just under $200,000. So those 2 numbers, the 606 and the 197, equal that $800,000 that we talked about as far as the deficit that we had to close. So what was initially a very scary, daunting number, because a district our size, $800,000 is, if those are all personnel cuts, you're looking at some really devastating losses. You're looking at really some impactful positions being cut. I think we've been able to look at this and make some things happen to eliminate that. And I think that this proposal for our personnel programs with our offsets puts the district in a good place for FY25. Budget additions, right now with our current budget, we're not looking at adding any positions. I think that can always change, and that can change in a couple of different ways. We're not looking at adding positions and adding money to the budget right now, but the way that could change is if as we go through this process, we reallocate money to a different position. If we see a need that's greater than one we have identified, we would move money to a different line item. But we're not looking to add a new position for FY25. So a few closing thoughts, and like I said, if there are questions or feedback, I think this would be a great time to start that conversation. But this is always something that I think people need to be aware of. Just because a need goes unfunded does not mean that need has gone away. So we had some increases in offsets. We've been able to do some things to retain some resources, but we have some things that we want, we need, that we just can't pay for right now. And that's what we need to continue to be working on this budget. We need to continue these conversations. I want to thank the Finance Committee for all of our conversations this year. I think that, we didn't always get what we wanted, but we had some fruitful conversations about what we can do for next steps. So I appreciate your collaboration in that. And I think we also need to make sure we preserve our staff and our programming. The cuts that I just outlined, again, nobody wants to cut personnel. And the one thing about some of the cuts I just outlined, that there is potential for some of those staff members to bump into other positions. So that doesn't mean they're going to be leaving the district. They just might be leaving that current role. But we want to preserve staff first and foremost. Supplies are one thing. You can find a way to bring in more supplies, but human capital and our teachers, our support staff, are the most important people outside of our students in the school district. Programming as well. We've done a lot of work the last couple of years in bringing in new programs for our kids. We want to preserve those programs, and we want to continue to offer new programs for our students. And some of those cost money, some do not. But what we need to do is continue to have these conversations and be collaborative with our efforts to look at what our students need and what our students deserve.
Thank you. All right, questions?
Listen, this is not what I expected to hear tonight. You all have really put the oars in the water and got the boat moving. You've really done. And that 800 is scary, and it was scary to us, so we had to start somewhere, and you know that. We didn't want to start at 100 and add on to it. I have two questions. The transportation is about 1.1. Are we looking at a potential 75% saving on the entire 1.1, give or take?
No, that would just, so the 75% reimbursement for circuit breaker transportation would just be on those placement transportation. So kids who are outplaced, it'd be for their transportation.
Okay, and on the special eds, we may get 75% reduction on that number,
We'll get 75% reimbursement for
the
tuition.
reimbursement on
Yes.
that. That's a biggie. That's a-
It is, so, you know, we went from 56 to 75, which equates to that $300,000.
1.6, that's a big number.
Chet, for
This looks like. we
for the
may
purposes
pay
of the public hearing, Chet, can you just say your name?
Yeah, Jeff Lebowski, I'm from the finance committee, and, I just went off 20 pounds, you know, that's a couple of months. This really is a relief. It's workable. It looks like it's working, along with the other things that we have done.
Mhm.
Thank you. Anyone else? It must have been a good presentation.
We will, I'm
Speechless.
sure we'll talk about this more at the next meeting, which is May 20th, I believe.
Yep.
I think there's a lot more messaging to be done with some of these ideas, but I think that this was a good start to talk about what we're looking at for FY25.
All right. Well, if there's no other comments, I suppose motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
All right, all in favor? All right, thank you for coming.
Thank you.